I call to order the July 23rd, 2018 regular business meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone and request everyone in the audience to please silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance of the United States of America. Mrs. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates? Present. Ms. Bolton?
Present.
Mrs. Present. Mr. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Messer?
Present.
Mr. Morosky?
Here.
President Jones?
Here. Thank you. I need a motion to approve the minutes from the business meeting from July 9th, 2018.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Okay, on behalf of the committee, I want to present the July 10th, 2018 Records Commission meeting report that was included as part of your packet. As you well know, CPS is required by Ohio law to have a Records Commission, which consists of the superintendent, treasurer, and board president. It is the Records Commission information is in there. Do board members have any questions or comments about the report? It happened to be the shortest meeting in the world, and I love that. Any questions? Okay, do we need to approve that, formal approval? Okay. I present that as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion is approved. Okay. Welcome, Ms. Lamont. Please introduce our presentation for the day.
Yes, it's a pleasure to introduce our fantastic food service coordinator, Jessica Shelley, and she will be presenting on the Good Food Purchasing Program.
Good morning.
This is a presentation that's a requirement from Ohio Department of Education that we present to the board every year to attest to our compliance with Senate Bill 210. Senate Bill 210 was passed in 2010, and what it does is legislate what can be sold to students during the school day, and that includes before the school day begins, during the school day, and during the extended school day. This is our 8th year that I'm proud to say that we are in compliance with Senate Bill 210. What it requires us to do is actually reach out to every principal to make sure that they can give us an attestation that they are in compliance with the rules and regulations that are presented to them from Senate Bill 210. Our board has been very proactive and has had a robust wellness program that has allowed us to be in compliance for several years. This ORC dictates what we can and cannot sell to our students. But because we focus so much on our whole students and the quality of their nutrition in all programs and in all opportunities offered through CPS, we have been in compliance with this regulation. Our wellness policy compliance, it does require us to regulate what is sold to our students before, during, and after the school day. All of our principals have attested to the fact that we are in compliance with these regulations. These standards do not apply to non-school hours, weekends, sporting events, and not on off-campus fundraising. What it would apply to is if a school was having a bake sale or a candy bar fundraiser, then these rules and regulations would come into effect. Our department has worked in conjunction with student services to make sure that we have a plethora of information available for our staff and teachers on how to provide non-food fundraising opportunities and also healthy school celebrations to be in compliance with Senate Bill 210. We also have a sale and consumption policy. This does not apply to any food sales to staff, and any sales that are made after the school day and extended school day are up to the discretion of the school wellness team. Finally, we have a vending and school store policy compliance we have to attest to, that no beverages or food is sold which is not in compliance with the Senate Bill 210 nutritional requirements and that they're not in competition with the National School Lunch Program that is sponsored through USDA that my program operates. So I'm going to wrap that up with any questions, but once again, it's a wonderful report that shows how ahead of the ballgame Cincinnati Public Schools has been over the last 8 years. There were many school districts in Ohio who had to scramble when this bill was passed, and we were able to take it in stride because of our proactive stance. Thank you.
Thank you. Do board members have questions or comments? Okay, none noted.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shelley. Does anyone have any kudos? Ms. Copeland Dansby?
I do. I have a great big kudos. I'd like to ask my colleagues to join me in wishing Mr. Messer a very happy birthday today. Today's Mr. Messer's birthday, in case we didn't know.
Thank you.
Kudos to you. Have a great day.
Happy birthday. Facebook continues to fail me.
Other kudos? Mr. Moronsky?
Yeah, I have kudos. My most recent kudos to the whole Cincinnati Public School District and to Board Member Bolton for leadership on pushing to ensure that implementation of ESSA in the state included local control. As we know, we got the strategic plan from the state of Ohio, and it looks pretty good. And if you read through it, it looks like Cincinnati Public Schools strategic plan for the whole state, including health centers and all the great things that have happened before Ozzie and Ryan and I showed up. So just kudos to all the hard work. And I know that Eva was spending a lot of time in Columbus with folks to make sure that the recommendations were put in. So to everybody, kudos to us. The state wants to be just like us. As Mr. Davis can attest, we were at OSBA training on Saturday. There was a lot of CPS talk. So I think everyone should know that.
Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other kudos? Okay, Ms. Bates, please present the retirements.
Yes, we have several retirements to announce today. First is Althea Thompson, who's a teacher at SCPA. I'm sure we all know Althea. Awesome. I'm happy for her, but it's a loss to that school and the district. We also have Michael E. Hurst, Deborah K. Johnson, and Judith R. White from our civil service personnel. So we would like to extend to them our congratulations and thank you to them for serving our children through their careers.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Okay, we are now at the item on our agenda for hearing from the public. Each speaker has 3 minutes to speak, and Mrs. Wagner will be our timekeeper. When the buzzer goes off, your 3 minutes are up. Please refrain from discussing any personnel items. When your name is called, please come to the podium to speak. Our only speaker for today is Julie Sellers.
Good morning to everybody on the board, the treasurer, and Tiane. I'm here today because I saw on the agenda that you're going to be making the recommendations for the Cincinnati Preschool Promise Board, and I would like to recommend that Laura Sangreget remains on the board as a CFT representative to continue to serve on that board, and her position will be able to bring stability to the board and to the district as we move forward this year. And I would also like to recommend Tracy Polanitz to serve on the Preschool Workforce Development Committee, and that is an appointment of the board also. Tracy is the president of the AFSCME Home Daycare Providers, and she brings much to our meetings. She has been coming, and that's the only person who's been coming representing AFSCME. Tracy has tons of knowledge and expertise, and we believe that she would be a great asset to that committee if you could add her to that list. And then I wanted to talk about some curricular issues. After hearing about the resignation of Assistant Superintendent Cheryl Broadnax, I would like to discuss the void that will be created within the district as she is moving on. She spent 27 years in this district and had great knowledge and has been a great asset in early literacy and early childhood. As you know, the early literacy has been our highest rating on the state report card, so it's very important that the district moves forward in a transparent manner, especially around the reading curriculum in the early grades. The reading specialists, which are in the Title I schools, serve as an important intervention for our students. I have received many calls from reading specialists and early childhood teachers over the past few days asking what the district's plans are and where they're headed for the primary level of the quality improvement work, and they want to know if the Thrive 5 for K-3 reading will continue. That is a program that was built out of the quality improvement work. Teachers think that this program's focus using the state's reading and writing standards is necessary, and this is especially important in the primary grades because during these early years, students are learning to read so that they will be able to read to learn. As they enter the intermediate years and beyond, it's very important that they have strong foundational skills, including phonics. When I started, phonics was not a main focus of reading, and it had a very negative impact on students across the whole United States. The primary reading specialists have been using the Children's Hospital QI model for the past 2 years. There was a very small group of teachers who started the first year. Last year, they were in 6 schools. So they started small, and they were planning to expand 6 additional schools this year. My concern is that 6 of the new schools, 2 will have new principals, and 1 has had many staff members transition out of that school. So 3 of the schools might not be the right locations to add on this year for it to continue successfully. Since school begins in just 3 weeks, I think that these schools need to be reviewed, and this needs to be, they need to have some kind of communication on what's going on. So teachers need to know who will be planning and organizing the grade-specific weekly huddle calls for those schools. And then who will be monitoring this work weekly and monthly through those calls and focusing on the work that they will be doing. And they want to make sure that the PDSAs will continue to be taking place and that these will serve as their reading lesson plans. Because all of this planning, it's a lot of extra work, but the teachers felt that it was worth the work of using the students' data to drive their lessons so that they were able to look at that data and make the invisible visible to them for their class. Principals must also have an understanding of this process to do the planning that is essential for their schools. And I know that through EIP and student achievement, there has been talk of changing this year's reading curriculum K-12. And people are very concerned about what this is going to look like in the primary grades. And we want to make sure that this process or the curriculum adoption goes through the committees and through curriculum council, and that it goes through to EIP. We heard that they will be doing novel studies, but we would like to know, how is that appropriate for K-3, and will every teacher be using the same trade books within their classrooms district-wide? And we want to make sure that whatever the curriculum is, it remains standards-based, because without that, it will be a hindrance to students being able to be successful with the state assessments. They want to know if the teachers will still be using the Thrive 5 program that's been provided to every teacher for reading and writing and incorporating those two. And I think that these changes to curriculum need to go to the board also, so that, because I'm sure that the board should be well aware of what's going on with curriculum. These are all important questions, not just for teachers, but also for board members, because you are responsible for the curriculum in the schools. And then on another note, CFT was very shocked, but this does tie into the whole intervention part of reading. CFT was shocked, yet very happy that the district was able to be fiscally conservative and carry over an ample amount of funds from last year to this year. I'm hopeful that CFT's APD for professional development that was denied for being untimely in June will be able to get processed as soon as possible so that we can move forward with the courses that teachers find so beneficial. The pre-K teachers used many of these courses last year with great success, and we want to make sure that that continues. And I have heard that the $10 million of prepaid taxes from the stadium deal is going to be invested. Many people, myself included, hope that some of those funds will also be invested directly to the children of CPS in the forms of interventions, especially in the title schools, with services such as additional reading specialists that work directly with students, either one-on-one or in small groups. These additional services could be in the schools with low percentages of students who are entering kindergarten ready, or schools that need extra supports for students who transition from 3rd grade to 4th grade, because once you step into 4th grade, they have larger class sizes and they don't have a para working in the room with the reading groups, and they have no other opportunities for intervention. So I hope that the decisions are being made and that we use the lens of equity for all of our students, because all students can learn, but some students need more supports than others. So I hope that there was a lot in here. I will send it to the board. I wanted to get it on some letterhead, but I will send that today to everybody. So thank you.
Thank you. Do board members have questions or comments?
I've got one.
Mr. Davis.
Just a question, because I didn't catch the lady's first name was Tracy, but I didn't catch her last.
Pollinitz.
Pollinitz, all right.
Do you know Tracy?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I do now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Bolton, would you please present the following resolution for board consideration? This is the strategic engagement planning.
Yes, Madam President, I would like to introduce a resolution adopting the strategic engagement and planning committee charter and hope for its adoption.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Discussion?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
One point of discussion, perhaps change. Looking at the charter, I would suggest that maybe in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th whereas paragraph, where it says the start of 1920 school year, that's more in accordance with the conclusion of the 1920 school year.
Okay.
Just looking at the timeline established in the first paragraph.
Okay.
Thank you.
Duly noted. We need to make sure that it gets incorporated in our, make the change. Yes. Ms. Bates.
This is a little out of order, but I just spoke with legal counsel, but I am going to be adding a resolution on behalf of the policy committee.
Today?
Today. It was to come forward, and because Mr. Hoying was on vacation, it didn't come forward, but policy feels that it's very important that we vote on this today. So I'll be bringing that in the
Okay. We'll add you in the sequence of
Yes,
that.
just-
You're going to be presenting on behalf of policy.
That's right.
Okay. Thank
Madam Chair, if I can use
Sorry.
my last motion, it's the last motion or discussion as an amendment if the seconder's agreement is in agreement with that change of one word.
Okay. Is there a second on that amendment?
Yep.
Okay. Discussion or comments? Mr. Messer?
Yeah, I think this just gets us teed up for some great work to start here in the next couple of weeks. And just calling out that I think it should be just clear reading this, but this is not just a board initiative. This is a board and administration holding hands to develop the roadmap for the district in the years to come. And, you know, I don't think we can underscore the importance of making sure that our community knows that this is kicking off, because it will be a community-wide conversation. As Board Member Bolton has mentioned a couple of times, it's an opportunity to flex the muscle that we've trained in some other activities recently to really engage deeper with the community that we serve, and all stakeholders of the community we serve. So I just wanted to call out that this is not just going to be a board initiative that just goes kind of wherever we see fit. It's going to be a holding hands with our administration, who has done some great work, but to collectively take the plan forward for the entire city of Cincinnati Public Schools and all the cities and towns we serve.
Thank you, Mr. Messer. Ms. Copeland Dansby.
I am very pleased that we are getting closer and closer to a final charter. I still have a couple questions. Number one, the name just keeps changing. And so I just want to make sure that we want to call this, are we calling this STEP or by letters, or?
I was wondering about that.
It's changed several times. So.
At least 4 times.
4 times?
Every one we've come up with sounds just worse than the other, so this was, I think, probably a staff suggestion, so that at least it's easier to say without sounding like you're discriminating or doing something bad.
Spec what?
Okay,
Spec what?
great.
Like
I
what
just,
happened.
no one else would mention that. I just thought that I would. The other thing, and I've talked to a couple other board members about this just in passing and that, but I still have a concern with the total number of 35 members. I think 35 members are too many. I don't want us to get to the point where we have so many members that we're ineffective. So I know that we are, I think our last conversation, we discussed a steering committee of a certain number and then a remaining committee of more. Does that total the 35, whomever suggestion that is? Is that your suggestion, Ms. Bolton?
Not so much a suggestion, but the idea that the 23 had applied, and it did represent a pretty diverse pool, but also I think per your suggestion, the last meeting we had, is to save us some time along the way, because there might be built-in expertise and subcommittees and task force, but more particularly, I think we built into the new, or staff did, built into the new resolution, or new charter, I should say, the idea of a steering committee. And I think that since that's in there, I think that secures the issue for all of us, which is, yeah, 35 or whatever is unwieldy, but not necessarily after you get a couple of months' work done and we figure out how to spread the work out based upon what the...
Sure, and I could agree with that. Thank you so much. So the steering committee, I think we have it laid out pretty clearly. My next question is, do we need to flush out, or, I'm not suggesting that we do, I'm just wondering, in that last bullet, the 5 community members appointed by the board, do we need to mention anything about a process related to how we're going to do that?
I would say not necessarily in the charter, since that will be procedure as such.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, but yeah, we'll need to work that one out.
And then the only other mention that I'll make, I do believe that we're talking about a publication date of June 30, 2020, having an initial draft by December 2019. Initially, I was thinking that that timeline was a bit far out, and I don't want the committee and the work of the community to get ahead of the richness and the great things we're doing academically. So if there's some initiatives in that are being proposed for even the, 18-19 school year, I don't want us to either lag behind or get ahead. It has to be done in concert with our learnings, our findings. We've got some great things happening with movement with our administration and that. So that was my point about that timeline. So.
If I might, Madam Chair, maybe one of the things to do there on the charter is no later than. in case, if we find that we can expedite this, and I think with the larger group
Right.
we can, I think we can do what the treasurer and superintendent do often, like no more than. Maybe we can do no later than in that sentence as
So then,
another
yeah.
suggestion.
So I would propose that amendment, and that we're saying, I don't know, first page of the charter, there are 5 bullets, that 5th bullet with a publication date of no later than.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with that, because I do think this has evolved because of the size of the group and the interest in this, and knowing that there are so many things that we already have in place, and we've assured the superintendent that many of those initiatives are going to go forward. We're not starting with a clean slate. We've got
Correct.
great stuff.
And I think we need to continue to say that. So I'll make that suggestion for that amendment in that 5th bullet as well as in that 3rd bullet.
Great.
No later than December 31, 2019.
Thank you.
And then, thank you. I don't know if somebody needs to second that or whatever.
Well, we have some comments. We have more discussion. Mr. Morosky, I believe you were first.
I just have one more.
Ms. Bates, followed by Mr. Messer. Ms. Bates?
Yes, a couple of comments. One, Ms. Copeland Dansby stated that we need to have a procedure regarding the 5 appointments, and Ms. Bolton agreed, but I brought this up in discussion, and what we decided to put into the charter is on page 2, under number 2, bullet 1, 2, 3, 4, and number 3, first bullet, and it says that the appointments will be filled in a manner consistent with existing practices of other committees that include community members after applicants have filled an application and covered a cover letter. That would be consistent with the way we appoint to our audit committee. So we already have a procedure in place. And I don't know if we want to be more explicit here, or that we just understand that that was the intent of those provisions in this charter.
No, I think I'm perfectly okay with that, and especially if we want to use another best practice. My question had to do with having more than 5 applications. How do we drill down to 5 community members for the steering? It wasn't necessarily the best practice or process.
Yes, if I could just comment on that. I think we do have very consistent practices that we're proud of. But I think, again, this is a very unique thing that we're doing here. And so, again, it does fall in the line of process. And I think it's a good idea that the committee sort of sort through even how you get to these 5 people. You already have a pool of people. And, you know, for example, one option would be to look within that group and have a process, or then you may open it up. So I think that the committee can work through that very easily to get to what you need.
And then my second comment is that, I mean, this is how we, worked through the preschool promise work that we did. We had a steering committee, and we had a committee that was probably larger than 23. So this really isn't something new. We've been through this before. And what we need is consistency in facilitation. That's really important. So I'll leave that up to the committee to decide, but that's what I would strongly recommend based on the work that we had done last year. Actually, that was only a year ago.
Yes, Mr. Messer.
Yeah, I think that the main constraint we have here in executing this is just simply time and resources, meaning, there's a board here who, this is not our full-time job, and leading a project this big in the private sector would have somebody that wakes up every day working the project plan. And so, I think that it would behoove us to explore partners in the community who have expertise to be the process driver. They don't do the content, but they are purely individuals who wake up to manage the project plan. Then the steering committee, often in project management, is not really at all focused on the output of the project. They're focused on where are we progressing on the timeline, and then what barriers do we need to overcome or risks do we need to address as we go through. And then there's the people actually doing the work that's in the content and in the material. So I think that there's a hierarchy of a process driver that would be great to explore, having somebody, maybe, a company or somebody who has a staff member that would be willing to donate their time during this period. Then I think that the definition of the steering committee is purely to manage the timeline and the project plan to get us to that outcome. And then there's the project team, which is the folks that will actually be doing the work. And it's not just them. They will be then reaching out to us, various stakeholders throughout the community. But so much of, I believe, the work here, frankly, is just number crunching and analysis, that if we can find those resources up front and that same person who can help us lead the project, it will get us to the goalpost a lot sooner. And I'd be happy to reach out to some of the consulting partners in Cincinnati that I at least know from my day job, who may be willing to invest that as one of their community service activities, loaning us a project driver 15, 20 hours a week over a 12-month period, and I think we would have a whole lot of work at our fingertips a lot sooner.
Yes. The charter does incorporate language so that we can use any external resources. Ms. Copeland Dansby, I thought I saw your hand up.
No.
Okay.
Initially, when I was speaking, I didn't get to finish my thoughts.
Okay.
But I'll defer.
We're good. You sure?
Pause.
Okay. All right. Other discussion, any questions? Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded to approve the revisions to the amendment. Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Copeland Dansby?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Aye.
President Jones?
Aye. Thank you. This is very exciting. Okay, Ms. Bolton, I'm going to ask you to do the next resolution as well.
Okay, thank you, and I'm reminded that Ms. Bates reminded us all about our efforts regarding preschool as a community committee and the size of it, and also the length goes back 3 or 4 years as we speak. So this is very apropos after the first full year of preschool promise being in place. We have a resolution naming the 5 organizations or groups from which the Cincinnati Public Schools Preschool Expansion Organization board seats will be appointed. CPS has, as you know, 5 seats. Preschool Promise has 5 seats, and I believe United Way has 5 seats on the community board. We are merely reintroducing this resolution with one change from previous years, and it is a change regarding the 5th seat. Previously, one of our seats was coming from the Head Start Parent Board, which we tried mightily over the first year to make that happen, and it was really logistically very, very difficult to happen. So now the superintendent and committee members and what have you have suggested that we want to maintain a parent representative from the district. And so the 5th organization talks in terms of the first being Interact for Health, and that term is still on. Families Forward, which is our very first partner in community learning centers. NAACP, the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers, which President Sellers recommended just recently, and then a parent from Cincinnati Public School District. So I introduced this resolution and hope for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Ms. Copeland Dansby?
I'd like somewhere to mention that the parent from Cincinnati Public School District has some preschool experience.
Okay.
When we chose the parent from the Head Start or what have you, I think our intention was to have a parent that had a student actively involved with preschool, I think. And so if that didn't go well, I get that. But I just think that at some point, a parent should have some level of a child having been through preschool.
Ms. Bolton?
I think that was is a good suggestion from a standpoint that one of the reasons the initial organization we suggested, the pool was too small and there were logistical problems. I think it's reasonable to say a preschool parent.
Okay.
Does that, I mean, if that's.
And I wasn't saying that the person should be preschool right now, but if you have a child in the 5th grade, you've had preschool experience. If you have a senior, you've had preschool experience. So I just really want to mention the preschool experience. Preschool parent. Preschool parent would be even greater.
Preschool experience or preschool parent?
Preschool
or-
parent would be even greater. I
Okay.
just, as, in my mind, as we choose parents for the relevancy of what we're asking, why we're asking them to participate, it's important that they have some real life experience, in my opinion.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Thank you.
Also, and Ms. Copeland Dansby, I'm following your line here, that, so what you're asking for is that priority be given in the process, that maybe we give a priority to current parents who have kids in preschool?
I think that'd be great. I
Okay.
think Ms. Bolton took
And
my
then-
thought
yeah.
even a step further.
Yeah, and then,
certainly.
we're not, so we'll have a pool, but we can open it up a little bit, so
Right.
we, yeah.
Sure, and can we say that for the revision, we'll just add that to where it says CPS parent, preschool parent?
Preschool parent.
Okay. Other questions or comments, Ms. Bates?
Will we be bringing forward the nominees at our next meeting?
I believe we are hoping to get that by our next meeting, yes.
If I might,
Yes.
Madam Chair, I think we do need to do that the next meeting, or certainly the second meeting of August or whatever, because these particular terms were the staggered terms and only lasting for 1 year.
Right.
And so I think the whole new preschool board, United Way is going through a selection process, as is the Preschool Promise folks. So they take office September 1st, so it has to happen in August.
Right, I think that was our plan.
Good.
Yes. Other questions or comments? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Just as a point of clarification, since there was an amendment on the floor, is the second, Mr. Morosky, are you okay with that? Okay. Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Copeland Dansby?
Yes.
Mr. Davis? Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Aye.
President Jones?
Aye. Thank you. Ms. Bates?
Yes, actually, I have, I'm going to have 3 motions, and I'm bringing this forward from our policy committee. The reason this was not on your agenda is because one of our, the legal counsel that was advising us during policy is on vacation this week. But legal counsel also believes that it's important that we move this forward at this meeting, and I can explain. There are very simple changes to the policy. The first motion I'm going to make is to amend the agenda to include a resolution amending Board Policy 1541, termination and resignation. I so move.
Second.
Second. Okay. Is this a vote, roll call, voice? Okay, Ms. Wagner, please call the.
What about 49?
That's next.
That's okay.
I'm sorry, discussion. Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Copeland Dansby? Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Aye.
President Jones?
Aye.
And now my second motion is a 48-hour waiver to introduce a resolution amending Board Policy 1541, termination and resignation. I so move.
Second.
Second, is there a question, comment?
That was my comment. I thought we should have done that the other way, but
Oh,
since she
okay.
said we were going to do it,
All
it didn't
right.
matter.
Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Copeland Dansby?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Oops, aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Aye.
President Jones?
Aye. Ms. Bates?
Yes, and I'm bringing forward from Policy Committee a resolution amending Board Policy 1541, termination and resignation. I move for adoption as printed.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Ms. Bates?
Yes, this was discussed at our Policy Committee and recommended to move forward, that this move forward by our full membership of the Policy Committee. It was part of our usual 3-year rotation review of our policies. Really, the only changes is, if you have the red line version in front of you, council recommended removing the employment of an administrator may be removed, suspended, because that's handled in another policy. Simply say terminated upon a majority vote at the Board of Education. And then there were some enumerations for reasons. Rather than enumerating the reason, a revised code that would include those reasons is included in the top part of the policy. So we are going to follow state law with regard to termination. And this we discussed, and it says, but not limited to disclosing a question to the student on a state mandated test. We thought that was somewhere in the law that we had to put that in our policy. That's why it's enumerated. And we just thought it was important that we keep that in there to be compliant with state law. And then on the second page, we use the term the administrators, because we're doing away with his, her. We're using that language and making that consistent within our policy. And policy 8141, we are following state law. So either we're rescinding that policy or it would be a duplicative policy. So we are, again, following state law with regard to reporting professional misconduct. Those were the 3 changes that we're recommending today for passage within this revised policy.
Other comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Copeland-Dansby? Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Aye.
President Jones?
Aye. Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Amat, in the absence of the superintendent, would you please present the superintendent's revised report?
Yes. On behalf of our superintendent, I would like to take this opportunity to remind our families that our customer care office is open year-round, and you can come in and enroll and register your child. And also, August 1st is the back-to-school date of our office staff and our principals, so our schools will be open at that time as well to accept any enrollment applications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the revised recommendations of the superintendent?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Yes, Ms. Bolton.
Question and maybe more of the suggestion, much as we suggested a while back on the treasurer's report, some things that would help with some clarity and transparency. And for the board's sake, it would be helpful for us to, let's see, on page 9, I guess, 8 and 9, 9 and 10, where it's talking in terms of 504 coordinators, case coordinators, and ESL coordinators. On those pages, 8, 9, 7, it would be helpful, I think, for the board. We don't do the hiring as such and the placement, but it would be really helpful for the board in the name of equity if we would know where those schools are to which these people are being appointed. It would help us if indeed that works. That way we would really know and better understand some of the needs that are there. And it may not have to fit into this format, but as an addendum, it might be helpful, particularly if these are particular school sites, rather than necessarily district-wide assignments. But I'm not sure that they might be, especially as we watch the growth of 504. And we just in student achievement heard testimony from students this past week about we may not in this particular school have enough psychs, and we may not have enough special people and what have you. So I think it would be helpful as we fund these positions to have a better understanding of where the great needs are and who might not be being served. So just make that as a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Copeland Dansby?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Aye.
President Jones?
Aye. Thank you. Ms. Wagner, please present the revised report of the treasurer. I'm sorry, for approval. I want to present the report of the treasurer. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
My mistake. Any discussion? Yes.
I know is that we look forward to the review of the Community Learning Center efforts, part of our DNA, if you will. I was struck by the pages 23, or 22, actually, items 6, page 6. And there's like 20-some items here about the monies for resource coordinators. And interested to know is, does the district fund all of the resource coordinators in the district?
That, I don't know. I know they're all split, the ones that we do fund are split funded between the school-wide pool and some other grants.
The report there that we had some revisions to. There are 5 school resource coordinators that are CPS employees, if you will. The rest are then a share with the lead agency and CPS funding, the 45-15 split. Or I'm getting that number wrong off the top of my head, but I think you know what I mean. Did I get that right?
So in its original configuration, resource coordinators weren't necessarily our employees, for sure, and they weren't necessarily all subsidized by our monies, be they fund or whatever. And obviously this coming year, and it's been happening throughout, it's not brand new, it's been an evolution. I think that's something that really does need to be reconsidered, just in the basic concept of not only the money, but the basic concept of the community learning centers was that the community had a bit of a say as to what was of priority. So I raise this, and I'm certainly going to vote for it because I don't want to not vote for it, but I do think this has to be something we have to discuss. The original intent is not necessarily that this was an extension of the school district or necessarily a use of the funds we have for particular things. This year, I'm okay, and I know it's been growing, but I hope we add that to our review.
Absolutely, and I just wanted to clarify my remark there, that those are Title I funds that are used for that, just to...
And I care, I worry more about our Title I funds than I do about our general fund, because they are specific to purpose and they are much more limited than our general fund funds. So I'm glad we've got another fund to pull from, but we have to be as precious about that one as our general fund. Thanks.
Yes, you want to respond?
I just wanted to make note that those contracts are late requests, but not due to anything that Ms. Worley or her staff did wrong. It had to do with the delay in getting budgets loaded, and so the process was delayed on our part and not her staff. I just wanted to clarify.
We're all good.
Dansby.
I think too, as we move forward in discussing how our community learning centers are funded, it's important to note the restrictions with particular grants and how the funds come in and how the lead agency is necessary in order to solicit some of those grants and that. I think that would be very important for board members to understand why some have to be in the realm of having to do with the lead agency, some are Title I, and vice versa. I think that's critically important. I'd also like to note on the amended page number 15, letter C, the word urban is not spelled correctly.
We'll get that fixed too.
That's my only other comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Okay, Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Ms. Bates? Aye. Bolton? Mrs. Copeland Dansby?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Aye.
President Jones?
Aye. Thank you. Any inquiries or updates? Mr. Messer?
Yeah, I just wanted to give 2 quick updates to the board. This morning, Lauren Worley and I met with friend of mine who is the president of the Ohio Realtors Association and very active in the realtor community here. And it was really to kind of pick his brain on how we could ensure that as people look at Cincinnati as a place to live and the communities in which we serve children, that parents and prospective community members have access to the right information as it relates to our schools. And I learned a little bit about their code of ethics, which is they can't give personal opinions, sometimes even facts about public schools, so that they're not seen to be steering people to certain houses, et cetera. But at the same time, he gave us lots of very creative ideas on how we could make sure that the information that the realtors provide parents is information that we would want to be shared, and then some other creative marketing opportunities so that we can almost do like those welcome packets when somebody buys a house, et cetera, to say, and welcome to Cincinnati Public Schools. So we'll be following up on a few of those ideas and kind of sketching something out, but I wanted to let the board know that we'd had that conversation, and I think there's some exciting things we can do there. And things that, frankly, he suggested that we could do. One of the most exciting things I thought was his idea to create a continuing education course where realtors could take and get their credits, their 30 they have to get every 2 years, and one being about Cincinnati Public Schools and the offerings that we have. So that was a fun thing. He thought we could do a live one, which could be done here, and then an online version so that all the other realtors throughout the region could take.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Did you all address how realtors work with other corporations and entities along that same line?
Yes. You know, and I think it called out that some of our major employers could actually proactively give information to their prospective employees who are moving here that realtors couldn't. So the Procter & Gamble's, the Johnson & Johnson's, the Fifth Thirds, whoever those people that mobilize people into our region the most, it would be a way for us to counter what maybe they get today, which is you need to go to Mason or you need to go to Westchester, et cetera, because they're schools. We can counter that through the employers and providing some current information. So that definitely was part of the conversation there. And then the second update kind of gave you a high-level sketch of some of the thoughts on how we might celebrate the one-year anniversary of preschool expansion in Cincinnati. And we've coordinated or coordinating getting some potential dates, so we will get those out to board members in hopes that the board members can attend. But the one is kind of a recognition dinner for staff, CPS staff who have put in blood, sweat, and tears to figure this thing out together over the past year, along with the Preschool Promise staff, that being a recognition and a thank you, as well as to our preschool teachers, providers, and others, more of a reception that would be held here, and thanking them for all their work that they put into, and that would go with the kind of the joint press conference that would be planned as part of the normal activities. But more information to come on that, and then we'll work to get dates where we can get the most people there, so we can collectively show our appreciation for their work.
Yes, thank you. Other inquiries or updates? Yes, Ms. Bolton.
One update, and you'll be seeing this in the Student Achievement Committee minutes, but since there's somewhat time sensitive, we did hear, as we mentioned before, testimony and presentation by several Walnut Hills students who had been conducting kind of a research and analysis and dialogue about their concerns regarding safety at their particular school. And we know that we've been working very hard district-wide on that, and the superintendent commissioned a task force last summer, and so we're in pretty good shape from a standpoint of great city schools and rating us so highly. But I think members Morosky and members Davis and I and the administration that was in attendance felt that we felt compelled to find an additional way to have dialogue with these students. And the suggestion was to have that dialogue early in August. If hopefully before the school school day starts, and if it is after the school day begins and the year begins, to have it after the school day for a presentation. We're very cognizant, too, of it can't be a one-off in the only one school. If we're going to do this, we probably need to do this with other students as well, and want to hear some of their concerns. And we have our student voice liaison, Member Morosky, that would particularly be helpful on that matter. But just wanted to kind of clue the board in that it's possible as sort of a pilot and as sort of an initial dialogue, you might be getting some requests of dates as to what might work for some sort of a dialogue with students, and depending upon how we invite and how they present, meaning who they would be inviting as well, just as a heads up, sometime in early August.
Mr. Morosky.
I have a couple updates and an inquiry. To piggyback off of Board Member Bolton's point, Ms. Worley and I are going to meet to come up with the process for the student voice selection in the fall. As everybody here I think knows, that was passed last December. Before I arrived, I sort of picked up the baton from Board Member Hoffman, Elisa Hoffman, and finalized what the structure of student voice would actually look like in the fall. As up to this point, as I think you know, it's been a means to get emails out, survey data back, but in the fall we're going to formalize it in the schools. And the structure we came up with was 13 kids a school and then 13 members on this intra sort of school committee. So I'll keep you updated on that. It could become a convenient avenue for us to use for things like this, whether it's safety or other issues. So I'll keep you up to date on that. Anytime you want to be involved, please let me know. Another update, I was talking with Representative Bill Seitz the other day about the report card bill that I know we're all aware of, amending how the state measures our schools. Representative Seitz said people were very amenable and liked Superintendent Mitchell's recommendations that were sent, for whatever that's worth. Some of you already know this, but for the public who doesn't, and for those of you who don't, he also reiterated that Governor Kasich is extremely tied to the letter grades, partially because, of course, he invented them, I think, his team. So he said that there was a Representative Brenner, who had recommended maybe looking at a STAR system like we do with early education. Either way, it's probably not going to happen until January, or maybe in that lame duck after November. But that's the update there, and I think it's moving ahead, and I know it's of great interest to me and all of us. Lastly, my inquiry, also regarding state legislative process and tied into Board Member Messer's piece with the real estate. Is there I was at OSBA with Board Member Davis, and we heard that House Bill 343 has made it pretty far in the State House. Have we as a board, and Ashley, you may know this, or you would know this, have we taken a strong stance against that? Did we pass a resolution against it? And if not, I might make an assignment to do so, because to remind folks, that's the unnecessary politicization of the valuation process of property taxes. So Ashley and Dan and their team, of course, do this as a matter of course, and if this passes, we would have to pass a resolution for every single property value dispute, make the whole process political, and make it take forever. So I was just curious if we ever took a stand.
I don't think we're sure. I think you could make an assignment that somebody look at that, maybe the legal department.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Messer?
So one update as it relates to kind of that topic that I should have mentioned is that, as you know, in the Finance Committee, our legislative partners give their updates. And one thing that you'll see in at our next meeting, when we look at the Treasurer's report, we will be looking for dates to get our board members together for brainstorming with our legislative partners to think proactively about what things would we like to see change, legislation that we could propose versus always being on the receiving end of what somebody in whatever random county thinks that they want to do because they have no idea what it's like for urban school districts, et cetera. But things that would, maybe address funding or might address other issues that have already been surfaced. So we want to brainstorm and catalog those ideas and then create a plan so that we enroll our legislative partners on the why behind them our legislators, on the why behind them, so that they, and then in turn, will take those forward. And frankly, we think some of those will be probably very little opposition. It just makes good sense, but maybe somebody's just not working on those. So dates will be coming to get the groups together in a way that's within our rules and regulations, as to not have the whole board together at the same time, because this would probably be at their offices. So we'll work through to make sure that everything is above and beyond expectations there. And then the second inquiry, as we begin the school year, one thing that I have gotten many questions about, and I always say, that's one I want to ask about. I think we can all agree that so much in the education comes from the four walls of a classroom, but it also comes from those other activities that inspire teamwork, the arts, and leadership through sports and extracurricular activities. So would it be possible, as we begin the school year sometime in the next couple of weeks, to just give an overview of, here are the outside of the classroom offerings that will be available to CPS students, including sports and the arts and any other activity that falls in that bucket, and maybe look at that so that we can see what's being offered to which schools, and then, if that is even broken out from a spending, can we look at by school and then by gender? So I think it would just be a great way to educate the public of the things that we are doing today, and so that we can help ensure that those things continue, but if there are gaps, that we might be able to look into some of those as well through our strategic planning, et cetera.
Ms. Bolton?
I think over the last couple of years, that kind of work's been done by the administration, and so I would recommend that probably do a catalog of the material they already have assembled, both the arts and the sports. It is by dollar and by site, and those charts already exist, fortunately. But I'm not sure, there's some for gender regarding sports, but not gender for some of the other activities. But I would really encourage the administration, rather than reinvent the wheel, if we could get a kind of a catalog of that, I think that's probably would serve our purposes. And
I think there's some of the things are available, specifically some of the athletics are available for pieces and parts, but I think just a comprehensive overview of everything that happens outside of the four walls that are opportunities for growth and development in lots of different ways. If we can just see that by school, by gender, and I think it would just be a great education as a new board member.
Thank you. That sounds like an assignment.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Two final updates. One is just a reminder to the board, if you check your work calendar, that we anticipate having our a work session to plan our next year's priorities. And the date escapes me, and I'll ask our staff to just send out a reminder, but you can check your date, it's in October. But we want to make sure we get it on everybody's calendars for sure. The plan is to invite, again, an outside facilitator so we can work through our next year's priorities. So that's a reminder. Number two, I was asked at a previous board meeting, I offered to work with Superintendent Mitchell on revising the order of the agenda and to follow up on some other recommendations about the agenda. So Superintendent Mitchell and I did meet. We have some ideas about that. We were able to get some examples from other districts, and to be honest with you, ours is probably still the most efficient in terms of content and process. Most of the ones, I have a stack of examples, and you think we're here long sometimes. I mean, they have to be there all night. So anyway, my plan is to provide a memo to the board this week, which outlines some of the suggestions that are made. The one immediate thing that we can change is the order where announcements and hearing of the public occur. So that's going to be fairly immediate, and then we'll follow up with the other suggested things that we want to do. So just so you'll look for it. Okay. Assignments. Mr. Morosky.
I would like to make an assignment to legal, and our general counsel, Ashley and Dan et al., to see if we did take any action, whether it was with OSBA or otherwise, against HB 343. And then additionally, because the overview that Board Member Davis and I received when I asked the same question in Columbus, it was very broad, that it had moved far. If perhaps we could find out exactly how far and how close this is to being signed and done. Thanks.
Would you like to formalize your assignment?
Formalize
Thank
it.
you.
So it sounds like I was making an inquiry to see if it existed. So if it isn't available in that form, then I'll make an assignment to have that as a future update presentation to the board.
Thank you. Ms. Bolton.
An assignment I'd like to do this assigned to the president, writing of a letter to inform those 20-some people that applied that they are on the committee, and that the board committee already determined that the first meeting is occurring on August 7th at 4 p.m. Here at probably over at Mayerson rather than, or in 1A, we're not sure, but here in this building. And I think the earlier they get that, even if it's an email form first and then a form letter, I think the better for everybody. And administration needs to know that. I think administration was at that meeting when we determined that date, so they probably have that date, August 7th at 4 p.m.
Great. Okay. Any other assignments? Having no other business before us, meeting is adjourned.
Have what?
Yes.